Hello, this is Bob Brown. Welcome to my Facebook and YouTube channel. This may be one of the most controversial videos I've made, and it's not meant to be, but it's really about, we're going to look at the 1982 Syberberg operatic version and cinematography of Richard Wagner's Parsifal. And this is a very powerful work of art, and it's so compact visually, Jungian archetypally, symbolism of cinematography, wonder of stagecraft, of costuming, makeup, music. It is just a fabulous sensual delight of total art, of how Syberberg, like Wagner, believed in complete art. Art, it's the whole thing is art, not just a piece of it, not just music. He took the entire spectrum of art: cinematography, opera, music, singing, stagecraft, costuming, lighting, stage, makeup, you name it, and he put it into this movie. Now, this is going to be very controversial, and this also has what I think has some links into the German influence on Freemasonry, but it also has a lot to do with atonement. And that's something that we don't hear a lot about in the 21st century. So this is going to be extremely controversial, and I apologize. There is going to be some imagery that some people may find objectionable. It's not meant to be put in there, but I'm watching why Syberberg put this in. So we're going to walk through this first, and then we'll do a commentary, and then we'll go through it again. It's going to be up to the viewer to decide if my commentary is correct or not. So we will proceed here. So, that was pretty controversial, as you saw. We'll go through it this time. Commentary. This actually is highly reflective paint, and they had to film it straight on to get that glow, the three-dimensional glow. Here we have a symbol of potentially the Virgin Mary, or angelic, or female mother symbol. Now, this is kind of, in my opinion, this is Syberberg showing the history of the German people. And of course, what we see immediately, this red color is coming in here. It's different than the other panoplies of red. This is a very distinctive color. Everyone in Germany at the time, this is a German-made opera and film, and a person at my age who recognizes this from Second World War will immediately recognize this color here. About here now we're getting concerned because we see something that looks very disturbingly familiar. And of course we see the symbol of the Third Reich, the swastika. So this is very disturbing. This is very disturbing, and you're thinking, what is Syberberg doing with this symbol in Wagner's Parsifal? Which is, of course, Parsifal is the knight-errant of King Arthur's court, and he is in search of the Holy Grail, and he's at the castle of the Holy Grail here. What in God's name is the symbol of the Third Reich doing here? Now we see other flags. We see the history of the German people, of German knighthood. We see an entire panoply of Germanic culture. We're seeing that the Third Reich is one piece of it, a very dark piece, but there is atonement in the fact that Germany has had this long history and of its contributions to the Western world and the world in general. So that sequence, in my opinion, is Syberberg trying to show the German people that although they have a dark history, there is atonement. And in our time period, we don't really talk about atonement. We talk about guilt, but we don't talk about atonement. It's as though only guilt exists and there is no atonement. I believe that's because of the heavily social Marxist atheistic tendencies in the world today, that they will put guilt on you, but they don't offer you, they give you a disease called guilt, but they never give you the cure. Now these two actors here, these two performers, they of course had nothing to do with the Holocaust, the horrors of the Holocaust. These are, at this time of 1982, when it was made, both these young men are too young to participate. So, although the history of their country and nation, and maybe even family members at this time, may have been involved in the horrors of the Third Reich, they themselves are not. And Syberberg, I think, is trying to free the German people of that dark past by saying, look, as bad as the Third Reich was, and we should never forget it, and that's why it's in this sequence, I believe. He said we should never forget what happened, but we have to find atonement. And that's what he's showing in this Parsifal. And they come out of this travel through German history, and they're traveling, of course, into the castle of the Holy Grail. Now, I believe these three symbols here are somewhat of the three banners of the highest orders of German knighthood. But I also think they represent orders of Freemasonry that I'll talk about in a moment. So he comes out of this kind of ritualized walk. He's looking around, and he sees, of course, the German cross, which is also somewhat symbolic of the Knights of Malta. You see the red panoply here, which in my opinion is very symbolic of the illustrious Order of the Red Cross, and the very distinctive white and black, which is the Order of the Temple. So these are three orders of German knighthood, which also correspond, in my opinion, to the York Rite of Freemasonry, because there's three here, and this is very symbolic. I'm not sure what Syberberg was trying to show here, other than he was maybe perhaps showing a link to Freemasonry of the York Rite, which is the Christian rite of Freemasonry. It was showing kind of a hidden symbolism here of the grandeur that Germany has passed, its mystical past to us. Although stained by the Third Reich, it still is a mystical, powerful past. Think of all the great contributions Germany has given to the world. Bach, Beethoven, Wagner, the science, the the literature, Goethe. All of this has been produced by Germany. So I believe Syberberg was walking through that, he was not running away from the past. He was not running away from the horrors of the Third Reich and the horrors of the Holocaust. He was saying it's there, but there has to be some type of atonement for the survivors and for the people, the generations that have come after that generation. So what is for them? What is for the generation that had nothing to do with this? That was the generation of Germans that were bequeathed this horrible history and this massive disruption within Germany that boiled out of the consciousness of one of the most civilized nations in all of Europe. I believe this is very instructive in the 21st century, because in the 21st century we see Islamofascism and the war against it. And we see that there has to be atonement on all sides, both the Americans and the conditions that the Middle East has been left in. And I'll leave that for another video to talk about that. But my point is, I think Syberberg is trying to show us that what we're missing is we're missing atonement. We have guilt and we have punishment, but we do not have the antidote of the cleansing and healing power of atonement, especially for generations that had nothing to do with the Holocaust. They are in many ways the children of Germany of after the Second World War and of modern day. They are as much victims in a way of the horrors of the Holocaust as anyone else. Not to the extent that the 6 million Jews that were slaughtered in the Holocaust were. We're not suggesting that. But we are saying that there has to be atonement, because without atonement, there's eternal guilt and eternal darkness. There is no journey like Parsifal to the castle of the Holy Grail to find the cup of Christ, to find redemption. And the social Marxist postmodernist thought process, that doesn't exist. There is no God, there is no Christ, there is no atonement, there is no Holy Grail, there is no mystical side of the human consciousness. Therefore, you cannot have atonement. You can have eternal guilt. And I'm saying that Syberberg and myself and the Freemasonry symbolism we see here, that it's being rejected. We're saying, no, you have to allow atonement for sins and to be allowed. Otherwise, the world will be caught in endless conflict. If you cannot forgive, you cannot forgive yourself. If you do not allow forgiveness, you will ultimately not forgive yourself. You will be caught in eternal guilt. And that's what the modern period has done, is that it's taken God, Christ, atonement, the Holy Grail, the mystical side of consciousness, the Jungian archetypes. It's taken it away. And without that, there's nothing but guilt. There's nothing but guilt. Now, as a Freemason, as a York Rite Freemason, as a Knights Templar, I'm pretty sure these symbols are not here by accident. These are the three major symbols of German knighthood. And this has been bequeathed to us through the York Rite into the Illustrious Order of the Red Cross, the Knights of Malta, and the Knights Templar. I'm not certain on this here, but the symbolism is very striking to me as a Knights Templar of the Freemason Knights Templar. This just cannot be an accident. It has to be here as a sign that Germany has its manhood, it has its knightly chivalric, the chivalry, it has it, and it's bequeathed it to the world, and that it can find atonement. So after this journey that includes the horrors of the Third Reich, there is atonement. So let's watch that again, and you can decide for yourself if my commentary has any validity. So it's very, very powerful archetypal. We see figures that look like skeletons here. I don't know if this is representative of the victims of the Holocaust, or these are knights that have fallen because they could not meet the challenges. So, but it's a very, very powerful, powerful sequence that Syberberg puts into Parsifal here. And as a Freemason, I'm really fascinated with this whole opera, especially this scene here. But I believe that he was trying to show the power of atonement, and that atonement is often not allowed in the modern world. We don't allow it. We don't allow it with our enemies. We don't allow it with our families. We don't allow it with our friends. So if there's no atonement, then there's a constant dehumanization. This is the dehumanization, the same thing the Nazis did to the Holocaust victims. It's the dehumanization. We see this over and over in the modern world in the 21st century. People and their religion on both sides of these conflicts are dehumanized, and there's no way that either side is able to atone for the atrocities each commits upon the other. And we see this all over the place, and that's why I believe that we have to allow the modern world to return, like Wagner wanted, to allow the possibility of the mystic states of consciousness and human consciousness to exist, and also to allow people who have committed grievous acts or have committed wrongs, they need to be allowed the power within each of us to allow them, to give them permission to find atonement. And this isn't true of ourselves, of our families, of our business, of our societies, of even our enemies. We must allow everyone on this planet to have the power of atonement. So on this Good Friday 2017, I wanted to walk through this very, very controversial scene from within Syberberg's Parsifal, both from the eyes of a Christian and as a Freemason and as a lifelong student of Jungian psychology and a lifelong student of Wagner. This is a powerful, powerful sequence. I can't recommend enough to watch this opera. It's available on YouTube. It's a complete work of art, controversial in many parts, but controversy is not wrong. Controversy can lead you to have questions in your mind. So I'm interested in your thoughts on my observations of this opera on Good Friday 2017. It is very controversial. It's very painful, but I'm sure in many people it evokes very painful memories. But I think the power of atonement, especially those generations, to allow those generations yet unborn that they can atone and they do not have to atone for the crimes of the past, is a powerful medicine that the 21st century needs. This has been Bob Brown. Have a good day. Have a happy Easter, and thank you for watching.